if you get those 5 to 7 players in and potentially 8 to 12 out, then really rubbing your hands and you're saying, right, this squad is going places now.
Welcome to a special feature episode of United. This is the first time the show will be appearing on audio podcast platforms, so a warm welcome to all new viewers and listeners. It feels like an opportune time to do some very quick background checks on who we are and why we deserve any of your precious time at all in a very crowded marketplace. I'm Steve Bartram. I was features editor at Manchester United Club Media from 2003 to 2025. And I'm joined by Nik Storey, professional level analyst and scout. Nick, how are you doing?
Good, thank you, Steve. Yeah, excited to discuss the way forward for United on your new show.
There you go. So to celebrate branching out, as you touched upon there, tackling a big one, a deep dive into what United need to do in the transfer market this summer. So before we do that, firstly, some ground rules and assumptions. We'll be working on the premise that United will line up next season 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, depending on the permanent head coach appointment. We're also tempting fate a little bit with the assumption that we'll be in Europe, so we'll need greater depth. Now we know, as of this week, that Harry Maguire is staying. It's pretty certain Kobbie will as well. Casemiro we know is going. And we'll assume that Bruno Fernandes is remaining, even though there's still a little bit of work to do to repair last summer's openness to selling him. Now, with the best will in the world, United aren't going to get their first choice target in every position, so there needs to be some compromise, as well as promotion from the academy where possible. Now, Nick, you've been in recruitment meetings as a scout and an analyst, and now obviously Jason Wilcox, Chris Vivell and company have constant meetings about this on an ongoing basis. But if they were sitting down to do a full one-off assessment of what this squad currently needs, what do you think they conclude?
I think you start obviously by saying what's happening with the squad. You've just mentioned there some assumptions about, contract extensions, players comings and goings, and I think that's the first point of call. What's actually happening factually? So you've got Casemiro leaving, as you've said, and you're looking, at least 7 more players when you look at it and you scope it out that are almost certain to leave. So the likes of Sancho, Højlund, of course, with the Napoli contract. You look at the likes of, well, Heaton is still potentially going to sign on, but you've got some players that are destined to go, and that's around 7 or 8. It could be as much as 12 players, of course, depending on then what happens with who you're targeting to refresh the squad. So I think you start with the outgoings, don't you? And then you look at where those holes are. And it goes out saying that, it's common knowledge. Every single Red will tell you is if you're losing Casemiro, and you're potentially losing a Bruno as well, who's in that central area, although we'll class him as a classic 10, obviously, in this discussion. You do need to strengthen that area of the field. That's where you get control of the game. That's where we've traditionally lacked since, your Carricks and the Keanes and the Scholeses of the world. And we really need to, we've always needed to bolster that area. And that's the one that certainly takes precedence this time. And the question becomes, it's not just one, it's potentially 2 or 3 central midfielders, isn't it?
100%. I mean, like you said, it's been a long old time since we've had the midfield that we probably deserve as a club. You probably are going back to the time of Carrick, the player, aren't you? So if we do this departmentally, everyone knows that midfield is the pressing issue. So let's dive in there. We need a 6 and an 8. Now, to lay some ground rules, explain to me the differing responsibilities of both, and probably then which is more important that United prioritise of the two.
It's a really interesting one, that, because long gone are the days of the 4-4-2, the Keenan Scholes type, the Robson and Ince, you stay I go type approach. It's more of a blend these days, isn't it? There's a blended element to the 6 and the 8 roles, and you've got to be that all kind of combative, all knowing central midfield, if you like, to play either these days. You think back to the days of when Busquets actually ruled the land in that position, when he just sat in front of the defence, but he could take the ball forward. He was 1 and 2 touch. He was moving through the zones with ease and combining with Xavi and Iniesta. You could even take it more recent in Premier League years. I thought the main thing Pep Guardiola did with City was to bring Gundogan back from his traditional attacking 8 or 10 role, if you like. Certainly for Germany, he was a 10. And then coming back in and being that creator from deep. And what did he win? 4 or 5 Premier Leagues by doing that. Modric is another famous one where traditionally seen as an attacking midfielder, a 10 obviously for Croatia, and a 10 early doors in his career. And by the end of his Spurs career, then certainly in Madrid, he's then dropping deep. Is that nimble on the half turn, able to set the tempo, and away you go. It's never been a 6 in recent years, but more like a creator from deep. And I suppose that's the interesting question. Do we prioritize the creator from deep? So in the old, talking 90s, early noughties, that would be a question of could Scholes come and sit in front of the defense, set the tempo, get the interception, make the 5, 10 yard pass, and away we go. And that's the question we need to ask now. So that's why there's some really interesting debates, isn't there, about do you just replace Casemiro and sit in, someone who sits in front of the defense and makes the ball. But even his role has transformed in the last 18 months. He's, very progressive with his passing. He doesn't just sit there. If he does go and he tends to go down that right and play them lovely looping balls and get involved in attacks, then obviously Mainu does sit back and cover, etc. So really interesting debate. Do you go for a 6 or an 8? It's actually what blend of those two is the best fit for Manchester United? I think that's the question to ask. And I'm sure we've got a long list, as many Reds have, about who those two, who that pairing could be, and potentially do we need that third now that there's obviously Ugarte is probably going to be moving on. Toby Collier doesn't look quite ready to step up to top four football with European standard football. So you're potentially looking at three, Steve.
Where does Kobbie Mainoo fit in all this? Because he's more of an 8. Obviously there was the whole debate over his best usage under Ruben Amorim, and obviously Ruben decided that the best usage was none at all. Michael's got him in there now. We're seeing, real sustaining glimpses of what he's capable of. I suppose, what do you see him becoming in the long term? And then how do you shape, working on the assumption that he is going to be there for the long term, how do you shape the rest of the rebuild around him?
I don't know whether we can phrase it as shaping the rebuild around him, but I understand your point. He's going to be staying. He's a valuable member of the squad, and I personally love him. I know there's some debates about him. We've discussed on this channel his pros and cons. This idea that he might not have the ground coverage or the legs. I personally think that's nonsense. He has got that. Otherwise, he would be nowhere near Manchester United, and he'd nowhere near Premier League level. So he's got that. What I think plays into that myth is his positioning. And you're right to say he's probably an 8, but we're not sure. He's certainly got that close control, that getting the ball off the defence, making the first pass from the second line, and then obviously moving to get the ball again and receive and create. So you're probably right, but it goes back to what we've just said. There's no standardized 6 and 8 anymore in the modern day, certainly in a 4-2-3-1. And let's not even get to we may have a manager that plays 4-3-3, which is, again, against all common perception, very different to a 4-2-3-1. You will need someone sitting a bit more and then split eights ahead of them. So I mean, just thinking ahead on that one, Kobbie is probably more suited to 4-3-3. He's one of the split eights, isn't he? Which is, he likes that left side. He likes to assist on that side. He'll receive off the 6 and move the ball forward. He's very good at ball manipulation. He's got the switch on him. I think he has got a long range pass on him, personally. And he's got that eye for the through ball as well. So, yeah, building around him in the sense that he's staying rather than building around, because I think that the thing with Kobbie is it's that thing that United fans do. We overrate players very early on. We overrate them, and then when they come back to a norm, which is usually a very good standard 8 out of 10 performances, we then think they've gone terrible. It happens all the time. It's happened recently with Euro. It's happened with Heaven. It's happened with Sesko. Ahmad was a crucial one. Why did Ten Hag play him? And you're right, Ten Hag probably should have played him a bit more. But because we had that high expectation of Ahmad, that he was this superstar already at such a young age, when his performances have dropped, probably about 5 or 6 games for a few games, the abuse the poor lad got was ridiculous. So it's about not hyping up these players too much and keeping a level-headedness. And yeah, let's support Kobbie. He's certainly going to get lots of game time next season, and we need some runners and a 6 or an 8 that can combine recovery and interception work with knitting the play and moving forward with Kobbie as a unit.
Just in terms of sort of lateral usage, do you see the 6 or the 8 on the left?
Well, again, if you look at what Carrick's doing at the moment, it's very vertical. It's Mainu ahead of Casemiro in vertical lines, and again, that'll then, depending on where the ball is played, will dictate where six moves like Casemiro, and then Kobbie will drop into that natural space that's vacated. Um, I think in general, if we think Kobbie has a left side preference, he does tend to do a lot of work on the left. And if you remember his well, the 3 goals that spring to mind, you've got the Lyon, the Wolves, the City goal. They all come from that left side. He loves to come in and bend that, and he does as he's moving through the midfield. He does tend to take that left side. So you're probably looking at someone um, to answer your question is to be slightly more right-sided dominant. It's not essential, of course, but it's probably something you'd look to do to balance things out. And if you buy into just being aware of that, because if we need at least 2 central midfielders, I think everyone's pretty much in agreement, and we can come on to who those might be. But you don't want to be buying 2 that are left side dominant because you've got Kobbie there that's already took up that mantle.
So who would be your top right-sided target then?
Well, interesting. If we say top target for midfield first, there's obviously huge admiration for Anderson. You and I love him too. He seems to be someone who can do everything, and I'm not sure we would put him as 6, but it's just to mention him early doors. And the sad sign at the moment seems to be that he's edging towards City, doesn't it? So that's the interesting one just to throw out there initially. But if we think, right, he's not the classic 6 who sits in front of the defence and he may be going to City, who is there? And I think I'm a huge fan of Tonali at Newcastle. I think he's that player that combines or blends those 2 roles really well. He won't just necessarily sit in front of that back four, but he certainly loves, I think it's 7 to 9 recoveries a game. He does receive off the back four. He's spreading the play very quickly, which is something we need to do at United. We need to get it into those wide areas, and we need to bring back that kind of, United of old, which I think Carrick's obviously trying to do at the moment. He creates that tempo, he gets his foot on the ball. Yes, there's a minor criticism on his close control. He tends to need a bit more space than your more nuanced sixes. The Busquets of the world, there's Xavis, the Iniestas, those close control 6 come 8s who can, totally, be press resistant and get past that first line. But I think, notwithstanding, Tonali ticks all the boxes for that person just to get his foot in, get his foot on the ball, release, and then go and support the play. And yeah, really. And then the great thing with Tonali as well, he's got the engine. He can go up and support attacks on the edge of the area. We've seen recently for Italy that he can do that with aplomb. And he's just got a wicked set piece on him as well, which of course Anderson has. And we may be missing that should Bruno either leave or become injured. So you've got something there in that sense. You've got that set piece element that Tonali offers. So there's one.
Ha. No, I would completely agree with that. I love the guy. I love the attitude, the sort of the grit that he brings to Newcastle's approach. And I know they do collectively up their game against us, but he's always stood out as just a nightmare to play against whenever we've gone up against them. So I would totally agree on him as top target. As you say, probably mindful that Anderson might well be going to City. I suppose the main issue is going to be Newcastle don't necessarily need to sell him, certainly not on the cheap. They've got form for dragging these things out all summer. So if a big chunk of the budget is going to have to go on him, is it then worth looking elsewhere? As not bargain basement, but look at say João Gomez at Wolves, as get him in the building as early as you can, just so you've got an animal really, just to cover a lot of ground, to disrupt, to cause chaos in there for the opposition.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, he's not going to come cheap to Tonali. I don't think Newcastle will let him go easily, but there's big rumours now. There's big talks that, agents have been approached and things like that. So when a player wants to go, it's pretty hard to keep hold of. And you're right, if that's going to be, well, the mooted figures are 80, 90 million. That's, it's incredible, really. But I don't blame Newcastle for asking for that, given the current market. You're then looking at that second midfielder being, obviously a lot cheaper, unless, this money seems to be coming from somewhere with Sir Jim. And well, if he's got 200 on centre mid, so be it. And then we'll have to look at the outgoings as well that we said earlier. So minimum 7 or 8 outgoings according to our calculations. That could be up to 12. So again, it's time independent, isn't it? And whether funds are coming in time. But certainly João Gomez, especially with Wolves, obviously almost certainly down now. He's got something about him. I like him. I like his age. I like his attitude. I like his movement. He's good with the carries. He can take the ball forward like Kobbie does. Obviously, he's got a bit of pace. And he's got that lovely big switch as well, isolated, one-on-ones on the wings. He's able to spot that. And he gets his foot in as well. There's two players we want to discuss today that surprise us when we look at the stats. And one of them is João Gomez, and another, one that we know very well is Jimmy Garner. They both surprise me in terms of what they provide in the defensive point of view. So you look at Garner, the most tackles in the league. I found that incredible when you think of him as this attacking centre mid of old, certainly when he was that kind of box to box eight, and certainly carrying that on at Everton, by the way. He's got such a wicked right foot on him. You wouldn't expect him to be the one to be back in defensive positions, back in that six, covering in front of the defence, interceptions, recoveries, tackles. So those two really, really piqued my interest. I think Garner's obviously unlikely, given the history, given where he's at now, and he might want to look at, we won't mention the team, but I know his boyhood club has been interested in him. So they're the two that really interest him from a slightly, let's say, budget point of view. But yeah, it's Gomez. If we get an expensive player such as an Anderson or Tonali, I wouldn't shirk a João Gomez. He's a player. He really is.
Well, the irritating thing with Garner, obviously, I totally agree. I had my eye on him all season, and prior to that as well, because he was out of contract until he recently extended with Everton. So that obviously muddies the waters, makes it a lot more prohibitive. But just going back to when I was at the club, I was chatting to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he was manager, and just in general asking him, if you could sort of parachute anyone into this squad, who would you have? And this was when Jimmy was sort of late teens. And quick as a flash, Ollie just said, I'd have Jimmy Garner, but 3 years older. He was held in such high regard, and Ollie had a vision for what he could bring to the team. But it goes that way, and doesn't it in football sometimes? Things don't always align at once, and it just happens to go that way. And it's great. Assuming he never comes back, it is great to go and see such a good lad having such a good career, because, as you say, he's two players in one almost, isn't he?
He really is, and credit to Ole and for spotting that, and a few of us, yourself and I, were surprised when he left the club. We didn't necessarily see him as an automatic starter, but it was surprising to see him go. It showed such caliber coming through the ranks, and as I say, someone who's combative as well as creative. They're gold dust, aren't they? And yeah, super player. And then I think the final one to mention, given your question on six, was Baleba, wasn't it? I think again, it's really hard to pinpoint a position, but I would say when you look at his recoveries, interceptions, and tackles, he's still rated very high in Premier League central midfielders, despite the poor season he's had in comparison to last season. So you class him as perhaps, when you're looking at 6 and 8, you perhaps just put him in the six category. And I think there's still room for that one. I think despite his poor season, we know what he's capable of. So it is clearly something like a mindset issue, isn't it? And although that's worrying, it's also fixable. So if he's playing within, in the zone, he's happy. We know what he can do, Baleba, and we mustn't look over that because he was such a brilliant player for a couple of seasons. The other ones are Nana, of course, but over Everton. But I think Baleba and Garner probably come ahead of him in the pecking order if that's who we're looking at.
On Baleba, it was put out there. He was basically the top target last summer, and obviously the price, I think Brighton were quoting 100 million, which obviously is, was far too much at the time. It's a real risk though, isn't it? Because I mean, there's pros and cons to it. Because obviously, if his form's dropped off as it has this season, then his value's dipped. So it becomes more affordable. But then it's more of a risk because, okay, if it's a mindset thing, is his head already at Old Trafford? Is that a good sign or a bad sign? It's kind of, you have to really calculate the risk, don't you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I keep thinking it over in my head again, but I'm a big believer if you've seen the talent there, then it's there, and people are quick to write him off. So I do think you don't become an international Premier League player for no reason. So I do take the point that he's dropped off, but I think the major drop off was early in the season when he didn't get the move. And I think we've seen a bit of a renaissance. And of course, obviously, Herzl has been putting him in and out since then as well. So he's not had, consistency in the 90 minutes and the match time. So I still think there's legs in that one. Literally with him, he's super. He's a great runner. He's on and off the ball. I can see him working. So although perhaps wouldn't have him as the number one target for sure, but if that deal can be done at much less than 100 million, much less, like you rightly allude to, then I'm still a fan of the Baleba deal. Definitely, he can provide that cover in front of the defence. Back and forward pressing, quick release, and go and support the attack. He's got that carry in the final third should we need it as well. So yeah, I don't see that one as completely ruled out. To be fair.
So, I mean, for me, the priorities are getting legs in there, because it's been so long since we had a ground swallowing monster in there, just to, like I say, really disrupt the opposition. Because for too long, I mean, it's less the case now, but for too long, it was too easy to play through us, wasn't it? We had just huge gaps, the donut formation essentially. And, we were so comfortable to play against. Thankfully, that's, like I say, been remedied. The coaching staff and Michael have obviously addressed that. Why wouldn't you? But for me, yeah, you put legs in there first and foremost. But just on the other one, in terms of the guys that I know you're a big fan of, you mentioned Adam Wharton before. Now he's a he's a thinking man's midfielder, isn't he? He's lovely on the eye, lovely to watch. Very, very high intellect player. Is there room for him plus legs if you're almost buying a pair?
Yeah, I think so. And that again brings us nicely on to the next stage in that double pivot, the number eight. So I do think Wharton's more of an eight than a six, although we can do that, deep line creative role, which again we alluded to at the top of the program. So I mean, me personally, I love him. We've got the list of eights that everyone's aware of. You've got the Stiller, who, yes, I believe might be signing a new contract there. We've got Wharton, we've got Adam Scott, of course, has come up recently, who we're both a big fan of, and Garner, who we've just discussed there, who's again this blend of a six and an eight. So I think Wharton for me, again, notwithstanding that Anderson is a huge favourite of mine, and I'm sure yours, Steve. Is potentially looking at that kind of City move, which yeah, is heartbreaking, isn't it? Really, but if we take that as potentially happening, I think Wharton stands out. He really does. He's the thinking man's midfielder. He's got a bit of Scalzi about him, hasn't he? But he's also got a bit of Keane or Robson about him. People forget he's got the engine. He looks languid. He looks, to all intents and purposes, a slightly lazy central midfielder, but he's not. This is the thing. His stats show that he's still in like the. I think it's only top 10 for interceptions, but in terms of recoveries, he's top six or seven. His progressive passing, he was rated one for most of the season, still in a poor Palace side. His progressive passing and ability to think decisively and quickly is almost eons above. even Tonali and Anderson in terms of his quick thinking, his Scholes-like presence on the ball. So make no mistake about it, he's a favourite of mine. I've liked him since his Blackburn days. There was obviously initial worries about his stature and build. There's not that's not a worry anymore. Gone are those days. You look at Pedri at Barcelona, arguably the best eight in the world right now. And that's not even to mention the likes of the Messis and the smaller players. We even mentioned Gundogan in central midfield are there. Bernardo, of course, has been City's player of the season. So I'm not worried about his stature. I'm not worried about Kobbie's legs. I'm not worried about Wharton's ability to get back in because they do this. This is done and it's analysed to the nth degree in the analysis room in the following days at training. If they're not doing these, not producing those figures, they're not in the team. It's that simple. So Wharton is able to get his foot in, and then he's able to create from deep, and then he's able to support. We remember the recent games where he's I think it was 2 assists, 1 assist, 2 assists in a period of 3 games. He's just got a lovely eye for the through ball. It's just a wonder of a left foot, and me personally, I'm going all out for Wharton. I mean, you're looking at Wharton or Tonali, but again, just understanding that Tonali perhaps is a slightly deeper option and a more of a direct replacement for Casemiro, whereas Wharton, it comes into timing, so you wouldn't want to replace Casemiro with Wharton. That's as the first option in my view. So it's all about when we're doing this building and what order are we doing it in. But certainly second, or if you're looking to get Wharton early doors and getting in the agency here, and hoping that is going on as we speak, then certainly I'd be putting him top of the list and moving on from there.
Okay. So if we run that play, if we say, okay, Wharton would be top target as your eight, who's coming in after him then? Because mindful that again, he's not going to come cheap. I think whichever way you skin this, we're looking at probably. I think we've got off light if we spend 150 million on the midfield alone. So if you like I say, if you run that play, if you go with Adam Wharton, top target, you're not also then going to get Tonali as well, are you? Without just essentially blowing the entire budget on that one area.
No, you're right, and like I say, it has one of those two will come first. It all depends on timings and how far discussions are going ahead. So with that in mind, you're then looking at either a 6 or an 8 coming in, depending on who's bought first, as we've just gone through in some detail. I think you've got to look at potentially some of the relegation sides. West Ham and Spurs, one of them could still go down. So then you're looking at maybe a Sarr. You're looking at in West Ham's team, Fernandez has been mooted recently. What a neat, lovely player he is. Again, coming deep, getting off the back line, moving forward. He's not a 10, but he's a creative 8 that can drop deep. So, you might look at a Fernandez, especially if they're going down. We'll come on to Jared Bowen. I know he's a favourite of yours, Steve, and when we talk about the front area of our team. So you might be looking at that, and again, we've already mentioned Gomez. Wolves will be going down. Both Andre and Gomez, both of them are super talents. But I do think João Gomez, with his ability to get forward, his ability to get his foot on the ball, to do both basically. He's got a set piece in him. He takes the corners. He's scored free kicks this season. I think he's potentially a budget buy that we should look at.
Okay. For the record, I wouldn't touch Spurs. Maybe Archie Gray, but otherwise, I just look at it and I just see underachievement. And I think we've taken such great strides with the collective mentality. As one of the best things Ruben Amorim did was really start to make inroads into the culture at Carrington over during his tenure. So no one from Spurs for me.
No, I totally respect your view. I guess the only other one to mention, which we briefly touched on, is Adam Scott. I
Yeah.
think but he's not going to come cheap now, is he? So it's one of them where your Tonali's, Andersons, Scotts, and Whartons are not going to. He might be the cheapest of the four, but he's certainly not going to come cheap. But he does look a player, and I would say he is more of obviously an 8, and that's someone who you could, build around and get him, moving forward with the Cunhas, with the Ahmads of the world and Fernandez. And there'll be, he does cover that ground both vertically and horizontally. So someone to keep an eye out, maybe not this summer window, but in the future.
And obviously, we have assumed that Elliot Anderson is going to go to City. You know, we haven't gone into any depth on this podcast about any other clubs, really. Obviously, City have got something pretty major hanging above them, which you would think would come into the thinking of transfer targets who, if they're not sure who they're going to go for. So let's run this play. Anderson does end up coming to United or does have an openness to going to United. I mean, it feels almost dirty to say, but he's always brought out that sort of memory of Steven Gerrard for me. And he's it's the similar gait, it's the similar playing style. It would be a guilty pleasure, sort of belatedly seeing a Gerrard-esque figure in that United midfield, wouldn't it?
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that, but but with my objective hat on, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that there's definitely comparisons. It's like he's kind of pictured, you know, his kind of boyhood hero is Gerrard by the looks of it, with the way you've mentioned his gait there, his movement, the way he receives the ball, the way he uses the outside of his foot. I mean, there's also a bit of Modric. I keep talking about him because he's one of my favourite central midfielders ever, and there's a touch of Modric about Anderson that is the way he knits play is hugely underrated. He's not just putting his foot in and spreading the long passes, which he likes to do. He likes to carry it as well. I mean, you look at the stats. It's up until the game before last, it was 292 carries as opposed to I think it was 490 passes, just to give the idea the balance between passing and carries of a central midfielder. So you've and that was a set period that was analysed against. And so the ratio there between carries and passes is really interesting for Anderson. So he will bring that dynamism. Obviously, it's why City are after him. And they've got funds galore, as we know. So that's why we're not bigging up the Anderson one too much. But he does. He's got that really interesting blend of knitting the play, finding the pass, looking for a through ball. He's got a bit of set piece about him too. Not quite at the level of Tonali in my view on set pieces, but he's really he is that all knowing eight. The Robsons, the eights of the world. And yeah, he'd be some coup if we got him. Yeah, I totally agree with you. But it's not looking that way.
No, no. And as we sort of touched upon at the top, we're not going to be able to get every top target in every position. So there will be opportunities for academy lads to step up. Now, in terms of the midfield, we've seen players go out and do very well on loan this season. Jacob Devaney's doing brilliantly at St Mirren at the moment. Now, I know that's just SPL. I know he's just 18, but he's stepped up to it absolutely seamlessly. He's from football in stock with his dad. So that's positive. Jack Morehouse is another one. I know he's caught your eye. And of course, we've got the Fletchers already knocking on the first team door. They've been in the squad a lot of the season. They've got on the pitch. Is there anyone floating around in that space who you think might be ready for a trial?
I think, yeah, I mean, start with Morehouse. We mentioned him at the start of the season in the pre-season analysis, and looking ahead, he is the one that for me stood out. And there's obviously talk like you say, Devaney. There's Thwaites, who slightly younger but really pulling up the middle of the park at the moment with his lovely, neat Carrick-esque football. Really pleasing to see with young Thwaites there. But I think for me, Morehouse is the one standing out. But again, caveat that with standing out in the same way Garner did. But yeah, Morehouse is receiving well. He's carrying the ball well. He's not afraid to put his foot in. He's got a cracking shot on him. He's scoring goals from outside the area. So yeah, listen, it's not something that's likely to happen where he's just going to come in next season and set the world on fire. But like Fletcher, like Garner before him, getting the odd appearance and building him in slowly but surely and seeing whether he's ready for it. The other player I was thinking of was Collier, coming in, having a taste of first team football, seeing whether he's ready. And Collier didn't disappoint. He didn't, do himself injustice at all. But with his move recently to Hull, I do feel that that is kind of Collier's level. That's a personal view. He might make a Premier League team in the coming 18 months, of course, and he'll deserve that if so, but not quite ready for Manchester United in my view. So yeah, Morehouse is one to look at, and let's hope his progress continues to be on that upward trajectory.
And of course, with it being a World Cup year, pre-season is going to be huge for the academy lads, not just in midfield, but in every position, isn't it? Because it's a proper chance to audition. And, we've seen it before with countless players. Marcus Rashford, probably most famously, Anthony Martial gets injured in the warm-up against Midtjylland. Rashford comes on out of nowhere, scores two against Arsenal next weekend, and suddenly, bam, he's off and running. Didn't come out of the team again until, obviously what happened recently. So it is just being ready at any given time, isn't it? And you can't always predict that, can you? Who's going to take the chance?
No, no, exactly. It will just happen spontaneously, as you say, and you'll get a run of games and bang and that's their boyhood dream come true. And it can happen the other way. You can get injured. You can have a couple of games where you've just had an absolute nightmare and you just don't get the chance again. So yeah, the academy is very promising. We know about Lacey, we know about JJ Gabriel, and now we've got 2 to 3 central midfielders as well that are looking really promising, which has not always been the case, aside from the Garners and the Pogbas we've touched upon. That midfield area has not necessarily produced, apart from when you go back to the class of '92, of course, but it's not necessarily produced in recent years. So that'll be really interesting to keep an eye out for.
So in summary then, in midfield, Casemiro's going. Ugarte, it's safe to say now, hasn't really worked out, but is a saleable asset. Collier, you'd think will move on. So overall, what does that department need?
Yeah, I think we've said from the outset, it's looking at potentially 3 midfielders. And where that third one comes from, I don't know. We've talked about Collier, Fletcher getting games recently, Morehouse coming through. These are unlikely to provide sustainable outlets, aren't they, for what's going to be a really important Champions League season next year, all being well. So I mean, you're looking at minimum two central midfielders, and you want that third one. Whether that's 2 8s and a 6 or 2 6s and 8 depends on the profile you're going for. We've already mentioned depends on who's going out first and what kind of funding becomes available. Even you look at Hoyland, Sancho, Rashford alone. I believe it's close to £1 million a week saved in wages. So it's getting those things done ASAP, which we're told that this is going on as we speak, which will then free up that funding, you'd like to hope. So my aim would be, not necessarily a guess, but an aim would be 3 central midfielders coming in. You need a minimum of 2.
Okay. So moving on to defence. And let's start in the middle. Obviously, Harry Maguire's just extended. That's great because he's in good form, but he's also an example to Lenny Yoro, Aidan Heaven, and they've said as much in public. Luke Shaw can also play left centre back at a push if required. So there's experience in there. There's also potential in there. But when I sort of zoom out, the struggles are with the centre backs who are kind of in their ostensible prime, sort of mid-20s. De Ligt obviously has had an injury nightmare this season. And, back injuries, you don't mess around with back injuries, do you? It's really hard to sort of put a time scale on full recovery. And then Lisandro Martinez, absolutely love the guy, love the player. He's a transformative player when he's fit, but he's had that big injury and then he's just had a couple more that have followed on from that. And you know how it goes. You get a big injury, you carry yourself differently, and that gives rise to other knocks and other susceptibilities. And he's admired in it, isn't he? So, I mean, first choice, Leach stays fit. But if doubts remain over those two, then and who do you look to bring in? Do you feel that there's a need to bring in another centre back?
I think so, in short. I think so. And I think that's why we're probably touching on the defence after the midfield. I think it is something, when you look at it on paper, it's quite worrying actually. We can't just talk of, a pool of talent and the future. It has to be the here and now. So when you look at the here and now, you've got De Ligt, who, shaky season at best last season, but started this season really well. And then has had this, horrendous back injury, which obviously we weren't told of initially, but it's turned out to be the case that, he's got this lower back issue that's just not going away. And yes, he's training and there's signs of a recovery, but how much can we trust that next season when there will be, hopefully that kind of, 60 game season rather than this 39, 40 game season. So that's a real worry. I mean, me personally, I'm thinking delay now is we don't consider him at this moment in time. So it's all the better for Maguire signing that extension, of course. Leacher, yeah, he's been a starter, and when him and Maguire have played together, it's been a really complementary partnership. You got the ball carrying Leacher that, coming out of the defence, playing those progressive passes, which he does so well, the long diagonals. And then Maguire, the box defender, wins everything in the air, great in attacking set pieces as well, of course. And they're a really nice pair together. The problem is getting them together on the field. Every time Licher goes down, you and I are like, oh God, what's coming next? And it could just be a tweak of the calf, a tweak, something's gone on with his shoulder. I remember there's a metatarsal issue. So it's really worrying, especially given how compact and solid he is as a player. It's a complete paradox with him. So, and then of course you got this pool of talent that we talk about. We've got from the likes of Fredrickson up to match appearances through to Yoro and Heaven. Really good, exciting young talents. I think if you put Yoro and Heaven together, you've got that all-encompassing, battling, ball playing, positionally aware centre back. But sadly, they're not. They've each got their own developments ahead of them. If you think about Yoro, we've talked about his static positioning, his awareness at set pieces, his awareness at corners in particular, who's around him, when to look at the ball, when to look at the man, get that body shape, get that body open. He's a bit erratic on the short to medium passing. I think he's got a lovely long range passing. He strides out of defence seamlessly, doesn't he? He's a good ball carrier, Yoro, and he's got that pass on him that the Old Trafford crowd is obviously up on their feet at times with it. But sometimes he's a bit careless in possession. He's got the pace to get back in, but we don't want to be seeing that. We don't want to be seeing him making those recoveries too often because it means he's been slightly out of position in the first place. Um, but yeah, big things will come from him, I'm sure. But we're just waiting for him to really, get into that zone that we know he can be. And then Heaven, he's the opposite of Euro. He's an excellent passer. He can stride out seamlessly through the lines, involved in the attack, really good left foot. Perhaps too risky at times, which is something that Euro's understood and been a little bit more cautious about. But I'd say Heaven's biggest issue is his general positioning. So his general positioning, we saw that with the Leeds goal away. We saw it with I think it was the Bournemouth game. We've seen a couple of times where he's just got over slightly late. He's not been in the right position when we've been counter pressed. But he is a solid player. He's certainly one for the future, and that left foot certainly comes in handy, especially with Lich's injury record. So it's a really nice pool of players, but getting them on the pitch is another issue. So I'm almost certain that we need another centre back.
And I know full well, I'm just going to get straight into it. I know full well you've got a prime target in mind. He's already in the Premier League. Sell him to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a couple of names been mentioned, hasn't there? There's the lad at Dortmund, Schlotterbeck, who's excellent on the ball, probably more so than his box defending, and there's talk of him. But I think the one that we've not really necessarily been linked with, but it's been certainly something that's caught the eye of the United recruitment team is Van Hecke over at Brighton. I think he really is. He is the part. I remember raving about him a couple of years ago, and when he was just coming through at Brighton, really confident on the ball, especially at Old Trafford always with Brighton. It seems confident on the ball, comes out, but he's also a solid defender as well. He's got that kind of box defending about him. His positional sense is outstanding, both in and outside the penalty area. He's dominant aerial. He's dominant in his ground duels. He's good at in attacking set pieces. He's a threat. He seems to be a great character. I know Brighton fans speak really highly of him. He's not got the injury record that two or three of our defenders have. And I think that they're saying he'll start for Koeman's Netherlands this summer, and even though they've got a really good set of 4 or 5 centre backs, he seems to be the one going ahead of certainly Van Dijk in Premier League form. I've got and make no qualms about saying that. Van de Ven, a little bit patchy in retreat, although really good and pacey on the ball. Van Hecke seems to be one that just provides that solidity, and he'd be ideal in terms of what we need, bringing the ball out, confident, oozing confidence on the ball, very tactically minded as well. I would go all out for him. In fairness, I'm not sure. There's been slight links with him, but I think that's one that we could be looking at. Absolutely.
There have been stronger links with Murillo and Nottingham Forest. Would you go for Van Hecke over him? I mean, personally speaking, weighing in on that, Murillo, I mean, we found it to our cost a couple of times. He's always on the line. He's always like a last gasp defender, isn't he? He's always thwarting not just United, various teams. It seems to be. I mean, we sort of grew up on defenders that would prevent rather than cure situations. Rio Ferdinand who would snuff out danger, and as and kind of as all action and exciting a style of defending as it is to be, the hero right at the last. It doesn't speak to a good functional collective unit, does it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And prevention rather than cure is excellently put. So you look at Van Hecke, and the reason he's not spoke of too much outside of um, analysis world, let's say, in terms of the football fan who's watching the game and seeing who's really coming to the fore, is because he is all about prevention. He's not all singing or dancing like Murillo. He's not making last gasp clearances on the line and sliding in the penalty area. I think, yeah, you're right. Rio said that himself. He wanted to prevent. He wanted to ensure they didn't get inside the penalty area. He didn't want to be making those last gasp, Carragher-esque challenges that he was particularly famous for. So it was, yeah. I think Van Hecke fits that mold more than Murillo. I think Murillo's a good player, solid, been linked as well, of course. Excellent left foot, good in possession. But to be honest, we've already got Aiden Heaven. In that mold, we've got Aiden Heaven, and he will become a Murillo-esque player. A bit more confidence about him, a bit more positioning, a bit more, solid in the air. We need a bit more aerial duel winning from Heaven. So I'm unsure on the Murillo link, to be honest. I like him, but there's a bit of erraticness about him, if that's a word. It's a bit of razzmatazz about him, and I'm not sure, but he's certainly an option. I'm not wouldn't rule out Murillo, certainly with them potentially going down as well, and we're talking about potentially raiding some of these clubs on the cheap. But yeah, no, I'd be Van Hecke over Schlotterbeck and Murillo for sure.
If we move to the fullbacks now, obviously we've got Luke Shaw left back. I think Patrick Dorgu has shown himself as, he came in as a left wing back. We weren't sure about him defensively. He's in his last 2 games before he went away injured. Obviously, really caught the eye on the left side of attack. So very small sample size. But if we can say, for argument's sake, that he's viewed more as an attacking, as a left-sided attacker, or also a right-sided attacker, given that he's done that for Lecce. So that leaves you Luke Shaw on the left, and then on the right you've got Diogo Dalot and Nus Mazraoui. Now, how to put this? So Dalot gets a fair amount of stick, and there've been times when I've had to bite my tongue on this channel when it's just been like, oh come on, please, because there's so much to like about him. Just little things like not even little things, huge things like the professionalism, always available, pace, athleticism, these things, but there's more to his game than that as well. You look at the number of chances that fall to him. It's not by coincidence, is it? He's embraced the sort of the role of the modern fullback to be a spare attacking weapon. It just so happens that he cannot finish his breakfast, and that's it's a shame, because if he was converting even half these chances, people would look at him in a whole different light, I reckon. So Dalot's there. You got Mazraoui there. Mazraoui can also play left. Now, with I know there's a huge external appetite for new fullbacks, particularly on the right side, and with a bit of kind of wariness over Luke Shaw's age and the lack of backup there. But I don't know. Certainly, I'd be looking to keep Dalot and Mazraoui just for their versatility and their sort of professionalism. And I think, you look at Harry Amas, people aren't talking about him. He was pulling up trees at Sheffield Wednesday. He's still very young, but he's a supremely confident young man. He's got a good relationship with Luke Shaw. So we can learn from, on his day, the best in the business. But do you think we need reinforcements in light of that? Do you think we need, for instance, like a starting right back?
A few questions in one there. Do we need a starting right back? Again, it depends how you view this, doesn't it? You've got Mazraoui and Dalot, as you've rightly said. And again, a bit like Kevin and Euro, if you put those two together, you've got an unbelievable all-conquering right back there. So they're complementary, but not in the way you'd like, because it's finding out who's best at that moment. I think Mazraoui's got a lot more to offer. We had the injury issue, of course, and he's come back. Yeah, he's had to find and fight his way back into the team. As you rightly say, Dalot holds that for very good reason. He has got the engine up and down. He does get back, and as much as he might not be the best tackler, he's good at the basics of defending, tracking the man, getting his distances correct, jockeying, making interceptions before they get in the penalty area. Gone are the days when he dives in, a bit like Wan-Bissaka used to, in fairness, diving in a bit too much in the penalty area, putting us at risk. So I do agree with you. Dalot's both the most underrated fullback in the league, but also the most frustrating fullback in the league, and not just because of his finishing, but just sometimes with his build from the back and his passing can go awry. His simple 10-yard passes are not quite up to scratch at times. So there is a frustration there with him, but you're certainly keeping him. I can't see why you wouldn't. He's well liked in the dressing room, as you've mentioned on previous shows. It's a real, arrow to his bow, really, or whatever the saying is. So you've got Mazraoui and Dalot there. We're probably not therefore looking for a right back. Left back's the interesting one. How far can Shaw be trusted to put the same amount of game time as he has this season? Um, until something comes up, like we knew it would with Mount, who we'll probably come on to, and we're likely to see that again with Shaw. But he's been superb. For my money, the best at the back this season, certainly for longevity. When you think Dillett and Maguire have been out at times, and Martinez has been out recently. So left back's interesting. Dorgu can cover there, as you say. Mazraoui can cover there. There's definitely a feeling that if you can get a Lewis Hall, then that is someone you have to go after. If there's any sign at all, if there's any murmurings at all that Hall would be open to that, then you've got to do it. But I suspect those opportunities are going to be few and far between this summer, and that's the problem. Yes, we'd love to go and raid Newcastle for Tonali and Hall. Yes, we'd like Murillo and Anderson from Forest. We'd like João Gomez and potentially a Hugo Bueno from Wolves, by the way. We'd love to do that, but you're not going to see these clubs letting go lightly. But yeah, an interesting one there. If we can't get a Hall, would be, a bargain option there in the young Spaniard, Hugo Bueno. Really like him. He's took the place of Aït-Nouri really seamlessly there over at Wolves.
Yeah, you're a huge fan of Aït-Nouri, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was the one. He was the Shaw replacement that we were screaming out for, and we lost the race on that one. Or we were late to the race as usual, and that really frustrates me from a United scouting and recruitment point of view. We tend to be late to these players. I know Ferguson often did it on purpose. Let's see how Berbatov will play at Spurs before we bring him in, and etc. But recently, we just got to be. We have been a bit more proactive, like we saw last summer. Let's hope that continues, and let's hope we've been monitoring some of these players for years, not months. Let's hope that these people have been on the radar.
You mentioned Mason Mount a moment ago. Let's take that as a segue into sort of the forward line. Obviously, we pumped an awful lot of money into that last summer. The three big signings: Šeško, Cunha, and Burmo. So you wouldn't imagine we're going to spend direct an awful lot of the budget towards the attack this time round. But I don't know where you stand on this, but for me, there's definitely room for an experienced number nine. and has been for a long old time because I think it was borderline negligent that you had Rasmus Højlund leading the line on his own. I know we're a little way apart on our general thoughts of Rasmus, but I don't know. It certainly to me, I mean, Šeško is clearly a very mindful individual, and he will take on as much learning as he possibly can. So if you can put someone who's been there and done it, who isn't expecting to play all the time, then I think there's only benefits to be had. And I'm going to start off by throwing a name into the mix because he's on a free this summer. Is Raul Jimenez from Fulham. The other thing that I like about him is he's got the character for it. He's still doing it, still scoring the goals, knows the league, he's physical, great in the air, all that stuff. But I look at him and I just think, obviously he had that really serious head injury. That's given him the way that he's fought back from that shows his character and shows his sort of load bearing capabilities. It gives him a perspective on things as well. And you kind of need that when you come into United.
Yeah, listen, I love your enthusiasm for Jimenez, and we spoke about him briefly on previous programs as well. He does fit that bill, doesn't he? Of coming in and supporting the young up and coming superstar in Šeško, giving him some breathing space. Because let's be honest, this idea of Mbeumo as a nine, it's not really worked. It's not really worked. It started quite well. The City and Arsenal games are quite obviously iconic now in that sense, in terms of the way he presses very well in Mbeumo when he's last to lead the line, and he's that outright number nine. But in recent games, we've seen the limitations of that approach. I don't think he is the small number nine that Carrick has favoured in his career. He can certainly play there, but I'm like you. I think nine now is the third now most important. Fullback, yes. I mean, he's kind of joint preference with potentially bringing in a fullback. But after central midfield areas and the centre back, I think this is a big issue because Šeško isn't quite doing it in terms of his back to play, in terms of coming deep in his own half, or certainly in and around the centre of the park and knitting the play well with Bruno and Cunha in and around him. He did it at times. I mean, the Burnley game stands out for obvious reasons at Turf Moor, but he needs to be a bit more aware. There was a game just 2-3 games ago now, which will come back to me, where you're seeing that obvious through ball. You're seeing Ahmad coming in on the right completely free, and he's not found it. He's not got that awareness yet. So we definitely need a nine, such as a Jimenez, that to come in. It don't have to be the Thuram from Inter that has been mooted. It doesn't have to be that big, huge outlay of cash on a number nine. It can be someone a bit more astute. I mean, you mentioned not wanting any Spurs player. If they go down, there's no reason why a Solanke can't join us for a season. There's no reason why we can't see someone of that ilk, a Jimenez, a Solanke, someone who's got that experience, that Premier League understanding, and helping Šeško, getting sure that we build the minutes up in the right way. Now, listen, Šeško could prove us wrong, carry on scoring goal after goal. The old adage that if he's scoring either from the bench or from starting the game, it doesn't matter. He's still impacting, right? But there's definitely something about his runs off the ball, his holding up of the play, knitting the play with the tens and the 7 and 11s around him that's not quite there yet. So I'm with you. A nine such as Jimenez to come in and to just really help him and to share the load, just in the same way we did with the famous 99 squad as well, with the four strikers. We certainly need more than the one outright number nine. I don't understand why it's not been discussed too much amongst the United ranks, to be honest, at the moment.
Well, all the talk at the minute in an attacking sense is a left winger, isn't it? Obviously Jan Diomande from Leipzig being pretty strongly linked, very heavily tipped. But again, you're looking at, I think, in the region of 90 millions being quoted, which unless we somehow overnight become an incredible selling club, I don't see where the funds are coming from. Obviously there are financial levers that can be pulled. There's more prize money. There's savings being made, as you touched upon earlier, huge savings on the wages, etc. But we don't know what those are. But what we do know is that 90 million pounds on a left winger does feel a bit extreme for not a priority position necessarily, because yes, we want a bit more width, but I think Cunha has shown less of a tendency to drift in field in the more recent games. Obviously, Dorgu only those two games against City and Arsenal, but it was superb. So I think he's got an opportunity maybe just between now and the end of the season to almost solve that problem. If he's back to full fitness and he's as all action as he has been, then he can provide that width. He can, you've seen improvements in his crossing. Certainly, I think he's linked up with Sesko a couple of times, which is really promising. And I don't know, to me, attack feels like it's probably the department where you can most entrust the kids in the academy. Shea Lacey, as you've mentioned earlier. I'm not going to throw JJ Gabriel into the mix just yet because he is legally a child. But if you know, it's like a chef, isn't it? Having everything coming to boil at the same time, all the dishes ready in the right order. If you know that that's in hand, you've got a prodigious young talent coming up, left-sided attacker in the next couple of years. You don't need to splurge now, do you?
No. And you're right, the ingredients in the right order. So for example, if we do go all out for a haul, and there's obviously lewis-skelly been mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Another excellent fullback who can help out in midfield. By the way, I love lewis-skelly. If that rumor is true, then fantastic. If that is then done at fullback, then you definitely don't need a left winger in terms of priorities anyway. In terms of the limited amount of cash and resource we have, you're definitely then not looking at huge 90, £100 million signings in Diomande if you've got that left back who's going to provide the width. We know Carrick, if he's staying, likes to provide the width on one of the sides with his fullback. And you'd hope that Mbeumo or Ahmad would be the right side providing width. And going back to your point about, sharing the load, Cunha's doing an excellent job out there. He's not going to get as much game time at 10 as he'd like if Bruno is staying. So we think it's 60, 70% that Bruno is likely to stay. So that's Cunha's position on the left, who's come of age in the last 5 games, 6 games. He's been superb. He's held the width. He's coming in at the right time. He's going down the left side at the right time. We've got 2 penalties from his movements from the left side when people have said, well, he's not naturally left-footed. Well, he's certainly using his left foot. And he's been our best player of the last half dozen games. So you're right. And then Dorgu as well, you've alluded to, certainly slightly more of an attacking-minded player than a defensive-minded player. Although I still hold out hope for him at left back. I really do. I think he's got the potential to be a super left back where his tackling rather than his intercepting and awareness is pretty damn good. It's more that positional awareness and understanding when to go for me on Dorgu. So yeah, it is about what pieces come in and in the timings. And if that happens, a fullback does come in, then it's almost certain we'll need that number 9. And you've got Mbeumo who can provide cover on the left side as well as 9, of course. I still would like to see Ahmad tried down the left. We would not. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we see him coming in off the right, and we see him sometimes as a second striker come 10, which I think is useful. And Rangers fans will certainly tell you about his approach there. So yeah, I really do see that, and I don't understand why there's not been too much talk. I think Laurie Whitwell has mentioned it actually. In fairness, I think he'd like an extra 9, and I'm all with Laurie on that one. I think Sesko isn't quite there yet, although he's absolute super talent, but no doubts about that, and he'll be a brilliant asset to the team in the next 24 months. But he'll need help, especially with the Champions League next season. We can't just be shoving Mbeumo up top and thinking that'll do the job because he's not quite at it at number 9.
And in terms of having, bringing in the experience, then you've got probably in his prime starting 9 of Sesko or Mbeumo. Coming further down the ranks in terms of the academy, Chido Obi, he's had a quiet year this year after breaking through, but by all accounts from behind the scenes, it sounds like he's taken a lot on board. It might be a loan. Is the mileage and maybe maybe it could be one of those we learn more in pre-season. It could be on the fence and he's like, right, okay, give him a few opportunities. If he shows his capabilities in that setup, then he stays. There was that pre-season, I think, maybe 10, 11, where Sir Alex ummed and ahed about sending Welbeck out on loan, sending Cleverley out on loan. And these things can go in the balance right up to the last minute, can't they? And so the pre-season, like I said earlier, is a proper opportunity for young lads to sort of stake a case. And I feel like for Chido, it's an especially strong option.
Yeah, definitely. I've been surprised at the lack of opportunities he's had since he first broke onto the scene.
Yeah.
And like you say, the research seems to be that he's coming of age, the kid, and he's good at receiving left and right foot. He can shoot with both feet. He's got a really good carry on him. I'd really like to see a lot more, certainly like you say in the preseason, and that'll give him some, hopefully, some opportunities to break in and, like say, help Chesko, and hopefully that one other. And another thing, just to throw out there, you don't necessarily have to go for the out and out winger, right? So we're talking about the front four in this section. Diomande can play right or left. I'm not saying he'd be an excellent asset by the looks of it. He's got real drive and power and a really good shot on him as well. So if we get someone like that, he potentially can help out in that kind of, not necessarily at nine, but the goal scoring capability of the team. The other two that have been mentioned, I know these are very vague links now, by the way. So this is like if you could wave a magic wand type player, but they're kind of Bradley Barklers of the world and the Vinny Juniors of the world. They're not strong links at all, just so we're clear, but they've been slightly mooted as wanting away from their respective clubs. And they can do anything across the front three as well. So with Bruno in behind. So yeah, it will depend on the profile you're going for. So where I disagree with the common understanding and of where the squad's at the moment is that we need a left winger to provide width. That's just not true. That's just not true. We've got the players there to do that. If we're going to bring in a profile like that, let it be a Diomande who can cut inside and support 10 and 9. Let it be a Bradley Barkler style, Vinny Jr., that type of player who can seamlessly transition between 11 and 9. So I think that's probably where it comes into play. And again, the big precursor to that is there a lewis-skelly, a Hall, or even a Hugo Bueno to come in and really help provide that width on the left side? And that, not to muddy the waters too much, that then contributes to who you pick in central midfielder and vice versa. So if you've got those left-sided players such as Anderson and Mainu, Cunha, etc., then you don't need too much width. Likewise, do we need a bit more balance in a Wharton who, kind of plies his trade a little more right of centre? So that all comes into play when you're trying to understand the squad composition.
Vinny Jr. is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's a huge name, very, very speculative. But certainly, there were links back in his far younger days. It was very much on United's radar. I know they had the opportunity to make a move and didn't act fast enough, so they could have potentially got him before he went to Real. So I know there's an existing link there between United and his camp. And you do wonder. It's not a nice environment for him to be in, is it? Everything he's subjected to off the field, all the constant haranguing and all the talking points. It's dreadful. I'm not saying English football is exempt of any of that, of course, but you would think at some point he might just think, "Oh, I'm done with this. I need a change." But maybe that's one for next summer when we don't require 150 to 200 million pounds of new midfielders. So departmentally, just rounding it off, goalkeepers, poor neglected goalkeepers. We kind of look and think and feel like we've solved that with Sen Alarmans, who's just been an inspired bit of business. Not a single complaint at all. Wonderful. But he's been completely fit. And if that changes, then what are you left with at the minute? It's Altay Bayindir, who is, with the greatest respect, not showing himself to be up to the standard. And Tom Heaton, who, there's talk that he might extend for another year. I do think that it's a huge, and without, over egging the pudding, it is massively important to keep Tom in some capacity, I would say, because, we like having that red thread through the building. We like having, obviously, Michael Carrick in the dugout at the moment. Great. Having Fletch, Johnny on the coaching staff. Wonderful. You need people that know the place, that know the culture. That's part of the reason why it's so great to keep Harry Maguire. Tom Heaton, if he's not staying there as a training goalkeeper or a backup goalkeeper, get him on the staff one way or another. But as it stands, contract is going to be up if he goes, and then you can't rely on Bayindir. So you need a strong backup goalkeeper for me. Now, again, I would go bargain basement shopping. Again, I would go Premier League. And again, I would go Wolves.
Yeah.
Jose Sarr, I think 1 year left on his deal. Really grown into it since he came in. He's just shown himself to me to be really up to standard. I think he'd be a very astute recruit.
I'm with you. It's strange, wasn't it? Independently before the show, we had a quick chat and we both came up with that name. So that's an interesting one. I think he's come up. He's like a red wine. He's come of age late on. He's doing really well. Is he 33 now? And if he doesn't want to play Championship football and he wants the chance to continue in the Premier League in some form, and who knows what happens with Senny Lamans. There may be game time opportunities, certainly with the number of games we're hoping to have next season. It's certainly a great shout. The other one that comes to mind again when you look at that kind of potential relegation area is West Ham's keeper, who's suddenly found himself number two behind Hermansen. Is Areola, similar age to Sarr. Yes, he's not perfect, obviously, but he's got that shot stopping. He's got the command of the area. His distribution obviously lets him down a little bit, but you're not going to get the perfect backup keeper. But as you've said, we have to improve upon Bayern. So it's one that's not been discussed out there at all, really, which is really surprising in the same manner you thought, Steve. So yeah, one of those two would work really well. And I think it's even more important, given that the club don't seem to be wanting to hold on to Vitek. You'll know a little bit more, Steve.
Well, I think obviously he's done very, very well at Bristol City. He's catching the eye, and I think honestly, it's not that they don't fancy him. I think it's that they know they can't have two starting goalkeepers that are basically the same age. I think he's essentially, I think, a year younger than Larmans, and if they were to sell him, I think it's a tough call, but there's not that many saleable assets within the club, and his stock will be very high at the moment. It will. He could theoretically go out on loan again for another year, but then he's a further year into his contract, so that would count against his value. It could be one of those. We've had a few keepers down the years, haven't we, that have left at a young age, have gone on to do really well. Ron Robert-Zieler won the World Cup with Germany in the squad. Various have sort of established themselves around the Premier League and around top leagues. And that's the thing with goalkeeping. There's only one position.
Yeah.
And you can't share it. I think the last time we even tried it was Lindegaard and De Gea, and that was really just Lindegaard was used to hasten De Gea's development and coax him on. So it's a one-man job, and Senna Larmans has done nothing so far to dispel the thought that it should be him. So yeah, I suspect he'll be sold. Obviously, Onana, we haven't touched upon Andre Onana. Again, it's not worked. I think everyone's pretty comfortable saying that now. I just hope he's not difficult to sell.
Sadly, he's going to have to go. So the way I look at it is the same as you. It has to be that he moves on. As much as I liked him at the start, as much as I loved his inter career and the potential that he could have offered us with a ball playing keeper, it just didn't work, did it? Let's be completely honest with that.
Oh, 100%. He's an absolutely lovely guy. He's a tremendous guy. He's really well thought of behind the scenes, but I think he had issues with concentration or whatever, but it simply didn't work. There was too many. I mean, that 23-24 Champions League campaign, that was a masterclass in it was almost sabotage at one stage. It was awful. It was awful. And he even managed to squeeze in one game there against Copenhagen when he was, the last minute hero saving a penalty. The other five were that bad that it's remembered so terribly. So yeah, if we use Onana then as a jumping off point for who's going. So from goalkeeping, Onana, Vitek, Bayern. From the defence, I don't know. I mean, how do you sell players that are constantly injured? I mean, you're not gonna get queues lining up to take a punt on a Delict or a Martinez, are you necessarily?
It's interesting that one, isn't it? Yeah, really interesting. No answer to that one, but I think at least one of those two may end up going. I think you potentially delete if this back injury is as serious as we're told it is. The other one is obvious is Malacia. I think he has to go. He's one of the eight that we kind of outlined in our have to go kind of list, and then there's potentially two to three other surprises across the squad. So you're looking at potentially 11 or 12 going. Um, Elsewhere, yeah, Maguire's staying, Shaw's likely to stay, Yoro and Heaven are going nowhere. So Fredrickson might want to find a championship club or a loan. And yeah, that's it. So I think Malassia's for certain, isn't it? And then as you move forward, we've already discussed most of them, haven't we? We've discussed the Hoylands and the Sanchos and Rashfords. Ugarte almost certainly has to move on. Collier will continue to get loan time and potentially be sold for some cash. And yeah, you're then looking at maybe one other surprise. That is that Mason Mount, who's just not done it again, if we're being honest. As much as that left 10 did suit him under Amorim, about the only player that it did fully 100% suit. He's not there in a 4-2-3-1 at 10. He's not really a left-sided like Cunha. He can't carry the ball as well as Cunha. He's not got the other foot the way Cunha has. He's not got that explosive pace that Cunha has. So I'm really struggling to find a place for Mason Mount. And overall, he has been a poor signing. As much as there's some revisionism going on with that stretch of 10 or 12 games that he had, it was exciting, absolutely. But it came to an abrupt end as it usually does.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We always hear it is a manager's dream, and yes, obviously he did thrive under Amorim. He's well liked. He's well respected. You know, teammates like him, managers love him. But when you can't stay fit and you can't contribute, he ain't playing for free. Sorry, he ain't sat on the sidelines watching for free either. So there has to be, given the depth of rebuild needed throughout the squad, we just have to be cutthroat with these things, don't we? And it would be a shame to see him go because, again, lovely lad, really well liked behind the scenes, but it's a business at the end of the day. Mason might be potentially a shock departure. I don't think there would be any level of surprise if Joshua Zirkzee also went out the door. I mean, for me, there's a player in there, but there's question marks over his recruitment. And certainly after a mixed first season with flashes of promise, you needed to see him build on it this year. And he's not had a sniff. He's not really done it in any sort of sustained level when he has been on the pitch. There's interest elsewhere. We've got a shortage of saleable assets across the board. I mean, it makes sense to look to sell him, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I think you're right. He's in that same camp as Mason Mount. Lovely lad, great attitude, well liked around the camp, and similar in terms of kind of position. Although you'd have to say Mount is 8 come 10, Joshua is a 10 come 9, so it's slightly different, of course, but similar in the way Amarim looked at them. And it's just it is a bit of no man's land, isn't it, for the current setup, and for both of them. That's the problem. And Mount bringing that sad kind of injury record with him, I'm afraid, and that's a frailty we can't afford any longer. Xerxes, yeah, where did he come in? He come in with Ten Hag. It was in light of the absence of a goal scorer when we've lost the likes of Rashford. Obviously, Hoyland's gone later. Hoyland came in at the same time as Xerxes, but he's gone again. Martial had previously left us. And Ten Hag has somehow come up with this profile that he thought would be the suitable response to that. And it's when you look at it, it's genuinely another bonkers bit of recruitment if you look at it on the whole. Lovely guy, well liked, trains well, comes on and impacts games. Who can forget his last one at Leeds, his last major cameo. There's a player there, that's for sure. He's got silky touch. He does hold off defenders well. Yeah, if I'm being critical, he's often trying too much. He's taking on two or three, looking for that Megs. There is a bit of he wants to be the Cantona, and let's hope he can be at some other club, but he's just not quite ready yet. And that understanding of whether he's a 9 or a 10 has not done him any favours at all in this current setup, where we really needed a goal scorer to come in the last couple of 3 seasons before. We've got the current front four, which is more or less getting there, as we've already noted.
So that rounds off who we expect to leave, or we wouldn't be shocked to see leave. Obviously, we've chewed the fat for quite a while here, so it's probably worth going back over it. In summary, then, in an ideal world, we'd be looking for the following reinforcements: 2 to 3 central midfielders, either 2 6s and an 8, or 2 8s and a 6, a starting centre back, an experienced 9, Premier League level backup goalkeeper, and then on the left side, either a left back or a left winger. Is that a fair summary, would you say?
Or both, if you believe Harry's comments this week. wanting to win that Premier League next season. You got to love his confidence. That's some commentary there this week about himself and the squad. But yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Yeah, listen, if you get those 6 or 7, you're looking at some real squad building, aren't you? You're adding on to a really good window. I think we called it a 7 out of 10 window when we looked at it pre-season from the last summer. The bringing in of the Cunhas and Bumos of the world when you've lost the kind of nothingness of what Sancho and Anthony offered on the wide areas, and Højlund, as much as he's done a bit better this season in Serie A, they just weren't cutting it. And yeah, let's put that Ten Hag window or two behind us. So yeah, if you're looking to bring in those players you've just mentioned, 2 to 3 centimeters are absolutely essential. A number 9 to support Šeško, a centre back who I still think is up there with the centre mids in order to procure the Van Hechts of the world. Someone solid who can really add quality to the squad. We don't need this kind of talent profile that we've already got in abundance. A full back and a left winger, you mentioned there. It's hard to put them in the order, isn't it? Because I understand that again, there's clamour around this need to have width on the left, but it depends whether Carrick is going to be the man, because we know that he only holds width on one side. Cunha's doing a fantastic job at present. I think a full back in advance of that. I really do. And who knows if we can somehow get a Hall or a lewis-skelly, that really then helps the players ahead. And as much as we've been linked with, lightly linked, the wish list of Barcola, Morgan Rogers, Vinny Jr. in seasons gone by. Yes, that would be amazing, but there's not much else really. If you take out Diomande as well, who plays mostly right side, and he's still a bit lacking that polish and finesse, you might look at a fullback first, really. And then that solves a number of issues ahead. So again, it's going to be an interesting recruitment window because they're going to have to get the ordering right, especially with cash going out, some cash coming in, of course. But you're going to have to look at how you order those transfers in. And I'm sure it's going on. I'm sure those discussions with agents are, frantic behind the scenes at the present time. But that's where you want to be. And if you want to challenge for titles, we're not there now, are we? But if you get those 5 to 7 players in and potentially 8 to 12 out, then really rubbing your hands and you're saying, right, this squad is going places now.
I mean, and at very least, even if you're not challenging for the title next season, with those recruitments, you are almost certainly consolidating top 4, aren't you? Which just gives you some more solid foundations to build on the following season and the following season, because it's kind of an opportune time, isn't it? If you zoom out and look at the Premier League, there are no dynasties forming right now. So, the much vaunted sort of 3-year plan that we had, 3 to 4 year plan, we're almost skipping a year this year. There's a real opportunity there, isn't there?
Yeah, and again, just not to be negative, but not to fall back into that trap of obviously thinking we belong there. That happened under Ten Hag when he finished, was it second? And you look at what happened next. So it's being really solid, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and just ensuring that we don't fall back into that malaise. You look at what Liverpool have done this season after winning the league, and it's so temperamental at the moment in the Premier League. So, like you say, it should consolidate a top 4 position for the couple of seasons to come. And who knows, we could push on even further. But let's ensure we do that groundwork, and squad building and profiling needs to be so much better than it was under the Woodward days. That's just the truth of the matter. And handing out huge contracts for a huge amount of years and putting us in this, position that was highly, highly avoidable.
Awesome. It's going to be such an exciting summer. But until then, Nick, thank you very, very much for joining. And yeah, we'll see you soon after the Leeds game.
Thank you for having me.